Welcome to our course in Miracles Chapters in a Nutshell. This is the first of that series, and this is Chapter 1 in a Nutshell. Now, this Chapters in a Nutshell series aims at giving you a visual overview of each chapter so that you can better understand the book itself. Of course, this is just my own understanding and interpretations, and I'm sure you'll find your own. Finally, let me make it very, very clear that this is not a replacement of reading the actual book. What I have done here is to provide a skinny overview, a map. You still have to read the actual book to understand the terrain, because the map is not the terrain. Maps are always impoverished versions of the real thing, but they help us navigate and understand the real thing. So read the book yourself after going through this overview. This is David Cameron Gikandi from www.miracles4.me. So let's start right away. Let's start with some real-life accounts to help us understand what we are about to learn. We will watch two videos that will begin to help us grasp what this chapter is about. Please watch the experiences of these two gentlemen.
Until my 30th year, I lived in a state of almost continuous anxiety, interspersed with periods of suicidal depression. It feels now as if I'm talking about some past lifetime or somebody else's life. One night, not long after my 29th birthday, I woke up in the early hours with a feeling of absolute dread. I had woken up with such a feeling many times before, but this time it was more intense than it had ever been. The silence of the night, the vague outlines of the furniture in the dark room, the distant noise of a passing train, everything felt so alien, so hostile, and so utterly meaningless that it created in me a deep loathing of the world. The most loathsome thing of all, however, was my own existence. What was the point in continuing to live with this burden of misery? Why carry on with this continuous struggle? I could feel that a deep longing for annihilation, for non-existence, was now becoming much stronger than the instinctive desire to continue to live. I cannot live with myself any longer. This was a thought that kept repeating itself in my mind. Then suddenly I became aware of what a peculiar thought it was. Am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me, the I and the self that I cannot live with. Maybe, I thought, only one of them is real. I was so stunned by this strange realization that my mind stopped. I was fully conscious, but there were no more thoughts. Then I felt drawn into what seemed like a vortex of energy. It was a slow movement at first and then accelerated. I was gripped by an intense fear and my body started to shake. I heard the words, "Resist nothing," as if spoken inside my chest. I could feel myself being sucked into a void. It felt as if the void was inside myself rather than outside. Suddenly, there was no more fear, and I let myself fall into that void. I have no recollection of what happened after that. I was awakened by the chirping of a bird outside the window. I had never heard such a sound before. My eyes were still closed and I saw the image of a precious diamond. Yes, if a diamond could make a sound, this is what it would be like. I opened my eyes. The first light of dawn was filtering through the curtains. Without any thought, I knew that there's infinitely more to light than we realize. That soft luminosity filtering through the curtains was love itself. Tears came into my eyes. I got up and walked around the room. I recognized the room, and yet I knew that I had never truly seen it before. Everything was fresh and pristine, as if it had just come into existence. I picked up things, a pencil, an empty bottle, marveling at the beauty and aliveness of it all. That day I walked around the city in utter amazement at the miracle of life on earth, as if I had just been born into this world. For the next 5 months, I lived in a state of uninterrupted deep peace and bliss. After that, it diminished somewhat in intensity, or perhaps it just seemed to because it became my natural state. I could still function in the world, although I realized that nothing I ever did could possibly add anything to what I already had. I knew, of course, that something profoundly significant had happened to me, but I didn't understand it at all. It wasn't until several years later, after I had read spiritual texts and spent time with spiritual teachers, that I realized that what everybody was looking for had already happened to me. I understood that the intense pressure of suffering that night must have forced my consciousness to withdraw from its identification with the unhappy and deeply fearful self, which is ultimately a fiction of the mind. This withdrawal must have been so complete that this false suffering self immediately collapsed, just as if a plug had been pulled out of an inflatable toy. What was left then was my true nature as the ever-present I am. Consciousness in its pure state, prior to identification with form. Later I also learned to go into that inner timeless and deathless realm that I had originally perceived as a void and remain fully conscious. I dwelt in states of such indescribable bliss and sacredness that even the original experience I just described pales in comparison. A time came when, for a while, I was left with nothing on the physical plane. I had no relationships, no job, no home, no socially defined identity. I spent almost 2 years sitting on park benches in a state of the most intense joy. But even the most beautiful experiences come and go. More fundamental, perhaps, than any experience is the undercurrent of peace that has never left me since then. Sometimes it is very strong, almost palpable, and others can feel it too. At other times it is somewhere in the background, like a distant melody. Later, people would occasionally come up to me and say, "I want what you have. Can you give it to me or show me how to get it?" And I would say, "You have it already. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise." That answer later grew into the book that you are listening to now. Before I knew it, I had an external identity again. I had become a spiritual teacher.
A few months ago, I understood suddenly how thought was just an illusory thing, and how thought is responsible for, if not all, most of the suffering we experience. And then I suddenly felt like I was looking at these thoughts from another perspective, and I wondered, who is it that's aware that I'm thinking? And suddenly I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom from myself, from my problems. I saw that I was bigger than what I do. I was bigger than my body. I was everything and everyone. I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe. And ever since that day, I've been trying to get back there. It comes and it goes. It's like riding a wave. Sometimes I'm on, sometimes I'm off. But at least I know where I want to go. And I want to take as many people with me as I possibly can, because the feeling is amazing.
Okay, I hope watching that made sense. Those videos were talking of revelation, also known as illumination, or as Abraham Maslow called them, peak experiences. Let's read a bit about revelations. Maslow called them, I quote, intense happiness and well being, and possibly the awareness of ultimate truth and the unity of all things. End quote. He said that the experience fills the individual with wonder and awe. He feels at one with the world and is pleased with it. He or she has seen the ultimate truth or the essence of all things. It has self-validating, self-justifying moments with their own intrinsic value. It is never negative, unpleasant, or evil. It is disoriented in time and space and accompanied by a loss of fear, anxiety, doubts, and inhibitions. So, a loss of fear. All individuals are capable of peak experiences. Those who do not have them somehow depress or deny them. It involves feelings of limitless horizons opening up to the vision, the feeling of being simultaneously more powerful and also more helpless than one ever was before, the feeling of ecstasy and wonder and awe, the loss of placement in time and space with, finally, the conviction that something extremely important and valuable had happened, so that the subject was to come to some extent transformed and strengthened even in his daily life by such experiences. So, great, huh? How does all that sound? How does it sit with you? So, this is basically what chapter 1 of A Course in Miracles is about. It is about revelations and the principles of miracles, mostly. I thought you might want to see how real revelations are in case you have never had one yourself, so that you can see that we are speaking of things in the here now, real things, not things that will happen when we die and go to heaven or something like that. No, we're talking about things that are here now in this lifetime. Let's see what Abraham Maslow identified as the characteristics of peak experiences. I'm just going to read them as they are written. Truth, honesty, reality, nakedness, simplicity, richness, essentiality, oughtness, beauty, pure, clean, and unadulterated completeness. Number 2, goodness, righteousness, desirability, oughtness, justice, benevolence, honesty. Number 3, beauty, rightness, form, aliveness, simplicity, richness, wholeness, perfection, completion, uniqueness, honesty. 4, wholeness, unity, integration, tendency to oneness, interconnectedness, simplicity, organization, structure, order, not dissociated, synergy, homonymous, and integrative tendencies. 4a, dichotomy, transcendence, acceptance, resolution, integration, or transcendence of dichotomies, polarities, opposites, and contradictions. In other words, the transcendence of dichotomies, polarities, opposites, and contradictions are, transcendence of separation, you could say. Synergy, that is transformation of oppositions into unities, of antagonists. And sorry, English is actually like my third language or something, so I apologize for my pronunciation sometimes. Transformation of oppositions into unities, of antagonists into collaborating or mutually enhancing partners. Number 5, aliveness, process, not deadness, dynamic, eternal, flowing, self-perpetuating, spontaneity, self-moving energy, self-forming, self-regulation, full functioning, changing and yet remaining the same, expressing itself, never ending. So as we read on, just keep in mind, these are the properties of revelation or illumination or peak experience. It is very difficult to describe. Like if you had a revelation or a peak experience moment, it would be very difficult for you to tell even the person closest to you how it felt. It is so unique, it's so different from what we're used to, that it is impossible to share truly with another person. Nevertheless, these are some of the characteristics that you might find within revelations or peak experiences, what we're reading through. So at least these keywords give us an idea of what that experience feels like. Okay, so let's continue reading. Number 6, uniqueness, idiosyncrasy, individuality, singularity, non-comparability. Its defining characteristics are novelty, quill, suchness, nothing else like it. Perfection, nothing superfluous, nothing lacking, everything in its right place. Unimprovable, just rightness, just soreness. Suitability, justice, completeness, nothing beyond, oughtness. 7a, necessity, inevitability, it must be just that way, not changed in any slightest way, and it is good that it is that way. So these are the characteristics of a revelation or an illumination, a peak experience. Okay, even from my own, the one that I went through, many of these are there. In fact, all of them were there. I can truthfully say that looking at this list, all of those characteristics were in one way or another in the revelation that I myself experienced. They all have truth, and it's the many forms that truth takes, whether it's simplicity or richness or beauty or purity or whatever. They all take on goodness, they all take on beauty, they all take on wholeness. And by the way, when we say beauty, it's not just the beauty that we see in a normal sunrise or sunset. It is beauty of such a richness that you cannot even begin to, you just go like, you just feel with a sense of awe, maybe. You can't believe it. It's just so perfect in its beauty and richness in its beauty, So they all have wholeness. They all transcend separation. They all feel, they all have a great deal of aliveness. They all have uniqueness, perfection, and necessity. And by necessity, it is not necessity as in need, but necessity as that's just the way it is, not changed at all, and it is good that way. Let's look at some more characteristics of revelation, illumination, peak experiences. This list just continues from the one we just read. So number 8, completion, ending, finality, justice. It's finished. No more changing of the gestalt, fulfillment, finis and telos, nothing missing or lacking, totality, fulfillment of destiny, cessation, climax, consummation, closure, death before rebirth, cessation and completion of growth and development, total gratification with no more gratification possible. No striving, no movement towards any goal because you're already there. Not pointing to anything beyond itself. Wow. In the revelation that I personally went through, even whenever I had a question in mind, before I could complete this question, the entire universe, you could say, both coming in from within me and outside of me, would answer that question in totality. So like now, as I speak to you, you're waiting and wondering, what's he gonna say next? What's David gonna say next? And then even as I say things, you're thinking, I didn't understand that. I wonder if. During the peak experience, you don't have those waiting for the next, or I wonder if, because everything comes in as a singularity that makes total sense and is complete. That's what completion means here, or that's one way to look at completion as it is meant here. I'm sure there are many other completion in so many infinite ways, okay? But I just thought I'd share my example so that you can see how one example of completion within a revelation. So let's move on. Number 9, justice. fairness, oughtness, suitability, architectonic quality, necessity, inevitability, disinterestedness, non-partiality. Number 9A, order, lawfulness, rightness, rhythm, regularity, symmetry, structure, nothing superfluous. You know, this word nothing superfluous, it keeps coming back up. It's like there's no excess, it's sufficient, it is enough. There's no need and there's no excess. It is the lack of need and the lack of excess. There is no need, yet there is no excess. That's what this idea of completeness or order or whatever, or beauty in a revelation is. Perfectly arranged. Number 10, simplicity, honesty, nakedness, purity, essentiality, succinctness, mathematical elegance, abstract unmistakability, essential skeletal structure, the heart of the matter, bluntness, only that which is necessary, without ornament, nothing extra or superfluous. Again, it comes back, this whole idea of nothing extra, nothing more than needed. And then at the same time, no need. So it's just exactly is. Okay? I want you to really get this because we've talked about sufficiency in a couple of the modules before. We even have a module, which is a bonus module on developing a relationship with money based on sufficiency. And in there, in all the different modules we've talked about this idea, we've said sufficiency is in the here now. It is not about accumulating excess, and at the same time, it actually eliminates need. It is just is. Nothing extra, nothing too little. Okay? So that's a property of the now moment. Moving on, number 11, richness, totality, differentiation, complexity, intricacy, nothing missing or hidden, all there. Non-importance, that is, everything is equally important, nothing is unimportant, everything left the way it is, without improving, simplifying, abstracting, rearranging. Comprehensiveness. Are you seeing how richness is defined so nicely here from the point of view of a revelation? Take these also to mean the qualities of the now moment. The now moment has the same qualities, I dare say, the same qualities as a revelation, because all these things we have read, as I read them, I also feel these are the qualities of the here now. When you're fully present, you notice that these qualities that we're reading of are the true qualities of the here now. But when we're too busy and or rather not even just too busy, we could actually be on holiday relaxing, but we're in our minds. When we're in our minds, as soon as you're in your mind, you already take yourself out of the present. You're somehow a little bit in the future, or very much in the future, and also a little bit of very much in the past. You're not present. When you're present in the here now, these are the qualities you experience. The same as when you have a revelation or illumination or a peak experience. Okay. We were at number 12. Let's continue reading. Number 12, effortlessness, ease, lack of strain, striving, or difficulty. Lack of strain, striving, or difficulty. Grace, perfect and beautifully functioning. Number 13, playfulness, fun, joy, amusement, gaiety, humor, exuberance, effortlessness. The now moment is so playful, and the revelation is also playful. It actually tickles you. You just have this super smile all the time. It just feels like chocolate inside, or really good stuff inside. Number 14, self-sufficiency, autonomy, independence, not needing anything other than itself in order to be itself, self-determining, environment transcendence, separateness, living by its own laws, identity. So there we go. That's the complete list of the properties or characteristics of a revelation, illumination, peak experience, and I dare say the now moment. Okay. The next point I'd like to illustrate is that each person's peak experience, revelation, illumination is personal and unique, although they share some common characteristics. Here are two accounts from two different people who wrote of their experience. I will read both. Notice how they are different from Eckhart Tolle's or Jim Carrey's experience, but also notice where they are similar. I was 16 and had always enjoyed solitary walks around my village home. One evening, I set out by myself, as usual, to walk up a lane towards the wood. I was not feeling particularly happy or particularly sad, just ordinary. I was certainly not looking for anything, just going for a walk to be peaceful. It must have been August because the corn was ripe and I only had a summer dress and sandals on. I was almost to the wood when I paused, turned to look at the cornfield, took 2 or 3 steps forward so I was able to touch the ears of the corn and watch them sway in the faint breeze. I looked at the end of the field. It had a hedge then, and beyond that to some tall trees towards the village. The sun was over to my left, it was not in my eyes. Then there must be a blank. I will never know for how long, because I was only in my normal conscious mind with normal faculties, and I came out of it, when I came out of it. Everywhere surrounding me was this white, bright, sparkling light, like sun or on frosty snow, like a million diamonds. And there was no cornfield, no trees, no sky. This light was everywhere. My ordinary eyes were open, but I was not seeing with them. It can only have lasted a moment, I think, or I would have fallen over. The feeling was indescribable, but I have never experienced anything in the years that followed that can compare with that glorious moment. It was blissful, uplifting. I felt open-mouthed wonder. Then the tops of the trees became visible once again, then a piece of the sky, and gradually the light was no more, and the cornfield uh, um, was spread before me. I stood there for a long time, trying in vain for it to come back, and have tried many times since, but I only saw it once. But I know in my heart it is still there, and here, and everywhere around us. I know heaven is within us and around us. I have had this wonderful experience which brought happiness beyond compare. Bucky faced a long ride home in a horse-drawn hansom cab. He recalled that his mind was still deeply under the influence of the many inspirational ideas, images, and emotions that had been provoked by the reading and discussions of the evening. He was feeling calm and peaceful when, without any warning of any kind, he found himself wrapped around, as it were, by a flame-colored cloud. For an instant he thought of a great fire somewhere in the city. Then he knew that the light was within himself. Upon this realization, Bucky experienced a great sense of exaltation, of joyousness, immediately followed by an intellectual illumination quite impossible to describe. It seemed as if there streamed into his brain one momentary lightning flash of the Brahmic splendor, which would henceforth forever lighten his life. He saw and knew that the cosmos is not dead matter, but a living presence, that the soul of man is immortal, that the universe is so built and ordered that without pre-adventure, all things work together for the good of each and all, that the foundation principle of this world is what we call love, and that the happiness of everyone is in the long run absolutely certain. Bucky would ever after insist that he learned more within the few seconds during which the illumination experience lasted than in previous years of study, and he learned much that no study could ever have taught. Now, let us look at the principles of miracles. I will pick out a few select phrases from A Course in Miracles, the ones that I found most prominent in giving us a big picture. Miracles are teaching devices. They demonstrate the power of giving, and they heal the errors of the mind, or rather illusions. Here we begin to see why miracles exist in the first place. They have a clear and definite purpose, mainly that they are actually teaching devices first and foremost. They teach many things, including demonstrating the power of giving, but their primary lesson is healing the mind of illusions. They reawaken the awareness that spirit and not the body is the altar of truth. They dispel illusions or darkness or error by shining light on them. Miracles make minds one with the Creator. You love your neighbor as yourself. You recognize her worth and yours simultaneously. In this way, miracles reflect the laws of eternity and not of time. Again, we see another teaching function of miracles, to make minds one with the Creator. It's still part of the whole eliminating illusions teaching function. They rearrange perception and place all levels in their true perspective. Sickness comes from confusing the levels. Here we see how they dispel illusions by rearranging your perception. They help you readily see what is truth, what is illusion, and why things appear as they do, and so on. There is no order of difficulty. All illusions are the same. None is harder or easier, bigger or smaller. The concept of size exists on a plane that is itself unreal. Wow, this one is extremely interesting to me. The concept of size exists on a plane that is itself unreal. That, that in itself demonstrates why miracles work. Remember what you learned in the quantum field module? You remember that? The whole, space and time being an illusion and all that. Now, put that knowledge together with this sentence. The concept of size exists on a plane that is itself unreal. Powerful stuff, isn't it? Can you see how true this statement is, even from a quantum physics point of view? And because of this, it isn't any harder to move a mountain than it is to move an ant. Yeah? If you come from the right perspective. If you see it for what it is, if you see the illusion for what it is, then it isn't hard to move it because it's just a projection. But if you believe that it is real, then it becomes extremely hard. There's another place in A Course in Miracles, and we'll get to it, where it says, do not forget that the order of difficulty is something that was established by you. So the Course there tells us this whole idea of this being bigger than smaller, this being more difficult than the other, is not something that exists in reality itself. It is something that we have made up in the world of illusion. We have projected this concept. They come from the source, which is beyond evaluation. In other words, miracles come from light, Creator, God, which is formless, timeless, and beyond anything you can conceive of from an ego perspective. And that is why they rearrange or eliminate illusion, because all they see is truth, truth about who you really are. Prayer is the communication device used to receive love. Miracles then express that love. Let's put this in another way. Imagination is the communication conduit that you use to reach your higher self. Think of prayer in the same way. It is the communication conduit. Okay? So you can almost interchange these words, prayer and imagination. Okay? You can almost do that. It just depends on how you direct your intent. If you, with prayer, it almost automatically implies that you've directed your intent towards your higher power, whereas imagination may or may not have that intent. But to me, it's pretty much the same thing with a directed intent towards the higher self or the higher power. Okay, so what I would say is don't think of prayer as begging a God in a formal way, like we have been taught in, let's say, religions. Okay, so think of it as opening your heart, your vision, or your imagination, you could say, connecting with your higher self and simply speaking to it like you would to a friend. Miracles are involuntary. They shouldn't be under conscious control. The source's voice will direct you very specifically. That makes perfect sense to me because it isn't the ego that is doing the miracles or any of this, right? So you literally have to not go through the ego. Miracles are a way of earning release from fear. Revelation induces a state in which fear has already been abolished. Miracles are thus a means and revelation is an end. We have already seen and read of Jim Carrey's and the other people's revelation experiences. So this sentence should make perfect sense. Enough said. Miracles enable you to heal the sick and raise the dead because you have made sickness and death yourself and can therefore abolish both. You are a miracle, capable of creating in the likeness of your Creator. Everything else is your own nightmare and does not exist. Only the creations of light are real. Until perception is healed, knowledge of the divine order is impossible. This is quite obvious when you think about it. If your perception is based on the illusion of separation, you cannot possibly see and know oneness. And remember, we said knowing is having experienced it. Knowing is not a concept in theory. It's like you only know how to ride a bike after you have actually ridden a bike. You cannot know how to ride a bike by reading about how to ride a bike. That's what we mean by knowing whenever we use that word in A Course in Miracles. The higher self, also known as the Holy Spirit, is the mechanism of miracles. He recognizes both God's creations and your illusions. He separates the true from the false by his ability to perceive totally rather than selectively. Voila! Now we finally understand why the higher self is what it is, and why even the New Thought or New Age movement and Eastern philosophy, and so many other philosophies or, all of them, they talk about it. The higher self is the Holy Spirit. Miracles honor you because you are lovable. They dispel illusions about yourself and perceive the light in you. They thus atone for your errors by freeing you from your nightmares. By releasing your mind from the imprisonment of your illusions, they restore your sanity. Miracles are examples of right thinking, aligning your perceptions with truth as the Creator created it. By perceiving light, darkness automatically disappears. As you can see, there is nothing to do or decide. It is already done for you. All you need to do is change your perception, from a separated split perception to right perception, which is then automatically done for you, taken into vision. Okay, but also I'd like to mention this, and we've discussed this before in another module. Look at this sentence: by perceiving light, darkness automatically disappears. Think back to, I don't know what time it is wherever you are right now listening to this or watching this, but imagine it's nighttime, and imagine you're actually in a room in your house, okay? Now, when you turn on the lights in your room, the darkness automatically disappears, okay? But you cannot turn on the darkness during the day. If you want darkness during the day, you literally have to seal the room. You have to, I don't know, literally block all entry of light into that room for you to get darkness. Darkness automatically disappears when there is light, because darkness is not an independent thing, it's not an objective reality. It is simply the absence of something else that is real. You see, light has properties, darkness doesn't have properties. Okay? Wholeness is the perceptual content of miracles. They thus correct or atone for the faulty perception of lack. To better understand this, we can add here that separation is the perceptual content of the ego. Wholeness is the perceptual content of miracles. Separation is the perceptual content of the ego. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is its true indiscriminateness. The miracle compares what you have made with creation, accepting what is in accord with it as true and rejecting what is out of accord as false. This is similar to what we said earlier, that there is no order of difficulty from one miracle to another, because an illusion is an illusion, including its apparent size. Miracles are thoughts, but unlike the ego's thoughts, which are more like image making, miracles are real thoughts, thoughts based on reality or oneness, but they are still thoughts. Let us now look at revelation, time, and miracles. Revelation induces complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. It reflects the original form of communication between God, or light creator source, and his creations. Revelation unites you directly with God. Miracles unite you directly with your brother. Neither emanates from consciousness, but both are experienced there. Consciousness is the state that induces action, though it does not inspire it. Revelation is intensely personal and cannot be meaningfully translated. That is why any attempt to describe it in words is impossible. Revelation induces only experience. Miracles, on the other hand, induce action. Revelation is literally unspeakable because it is an experience of unspeakable love. Whew, wow. Now, I can personally attest to this. I had a revelation experience myself. It was during the day, and I was in a car on the way to a garage to get another car fixed, and bam, it just happened. It was a gazillion times the best moment of my life, and I cannot accurately share the immensity, bliss, love, safety, and eternalness, and so much more of that moment. And it came with a miracle. My attempt to talk of it delivers something that, when I hear myself speak of it, it just sounds like a dry skeletal version of the actual experience. It really is impossible to talk about it well enough. Even the stories we just watched of Jim Carrey, Eckhart Tolle, and so on, did not even begin to touch on how awesome it must have been for them personally. In this phase of learning, working miracles is important because freedom from fear cannot be thrust upon you. Miracles lead to the highly personal experience of revelation. Now we start to see why we are being taught how to work miracles. Because we have to be part of the release from our own fear. The miracle is a sign of love among equals. Oneness. The miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception. This introduces an interval from which the giver and receiver both emerge further along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle thus has the unique property of abolishing time to the extent that it renders the interval of time it spans unnecessary. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. The miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. It does so by the underlying recognition of perfect equality of giver and receiver on which the miracle rests. The miracle shortens time by collapsing it, thus eliminating certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. Wow, this is so true. What I learned during my maybe, I really can't tell, but I'm thinking it was 10 to 20 minutes or so, I don't know, of my revelation and miracle episode. Whatever I learned there was so complete, so wholesome and magnificent that I estimate it should have taken me several lifetimes to learn the same thing that I did in that short period. Now, let us introduce a concept called atonement, or as I like to call it, at-one-ment. The Course speaks of it very often, and it is one of the tools of awakening, if I can call it that. For many of these, I will only read directly from A Course in Miracles and not add my own comments. Heaven and earth shall pass away means that they will not continue to exist as separate states. You are the work of God, and this work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. This is how a man must think of himself in his heart, because this is what he is. Error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is actually vulnerable. I would like to say something about this. Obviously, there's a lot of meaning in this statement, but one thing I would also like to add to it is, remember when we talked about emotional vulnerability and we talked about how magnificent it is, and I think you might have understood that. An additional benefit is that when you're emotionally vulnerable, you're not defending yourself, you're not trying to hide certain things. Okay, this whole thing of defending yourself, hiding certain things, dodging certain things, distorting certain things, whatever, all they achieve is to protect the illusion. Okay, to protect the illusion. When you're emotionally invulnerable, you're trying to defend yourself or hide or whatever it is, or in effect, you're protecting the illusion. When you're emotionally vulnerable, when you protect nothing, when you hide nothing, then automatically that which is true will surface, and without you really needing to help it, it will become very apparent, because now you're not covering it up with illusions. And whatever is an illusion is the one that's going to be vulnerable. So can you see that emotional vulnerability is like laying the cards on the table? That's what emotional vulnerability is. Just lay all the cards on the table. Then the ones that are fake will automatically disappear. The ones that are true will automatically rise to the surface. You see, that's another reason why emotional vulnerability is so powerful. It actually literally sifts the illusion from the truth and gets rid of the illusions. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. Whenever you experience the source's reassurances as threat, it is always because you are defending misplaced or misdirected loyalty. What I understand about this is that sometimes we find ourselves feeling uncomfortable and even threatened by all this talk of awakening and all that, enlightenment, awakening, love, whatever. We feel threatened sometimes. When that happens, we simply need to realize that it is because we have identified with the ego, the sense of a separated self. And because the ego is an illusion that dies the moment truth is accepted, we feel the fear that the ego also fears, because we have identified with it. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive correctly. You should look out from the perception of your own holiness to the holiness of others. Miracles arise from a mind that is ready for them. By being united, this mind goes out to everyone. As an expression of what you truly are, the miracle places the mind in a state of grace. The mind then naturally welcomes the host within and the stranger without. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. Let us now talk of the escape from darkness. The escape from darkness involves two stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. Same thing we talked about a little while ago, emotional vulnerability, or even when we were talking about healing shame by talking about it, telling your story, and so on. So let's continue reading. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. Okay? I think this is just lovely and so simple. Okay? To my understanding, this again brings us back to the idea of who do you place your allegiance with, ego or spirit? Ego survives in darkness by hiding bits and pieces, some in the subconscious, some in that person over there, some in that situation over there, some looking as if it's you, some looking as if it's someone or something else, and so on. Reverse this and you begin to heal. Just like with shame, exposure ends the illusion. The truth shall set you free. The miracle joins in the atonement or the atonement by placing the mind in the service of the Holy Spirit. This establishes the proper function of the mind and corrects its errors, which are merely lacks of love. If a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within. But the atonement restores spirit to its proper place. The mind that serves spirit is invulnerable. To me, this section is very telling. If a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within. I can personally attest to this. Again, back to my revelation, during that, I was in my town. I was in Mombasa, Kenya, actually. I was on the road going to my car dealer. Again, get the car sorted, like I mentioned earlier. So this was familiar territory. This is my hometown, on a road that I use going to my dealership during the day on a weekday. I wasn't in any place unfamiliar, and I wasn't out of mind. It was just a normal, clear, normal day. However, when the revelation came, the exact same things took on an aliveness that is impossible to describe. Not only was it breathtakingly beautiful, but everything literally was filled with wisdom. Everything, even the rocks, even the trees, even the light from the sun. And everything spoke to me very deeply. And the voice seemed to be coming from everything, inside of me, outside of me. I could not locate a single point it came from. And the knowledge was more profound than I can even tell. I can't even repeat it. I have memories of it, but I can't put it together like it was. And I felt like I was the entire universe, yet perceiving from the position that I was in the car, if that makes any sense. As soon as I entertained a little doubt, the experience left me and I was back to the usual perception, save for a lingering sense of bliss and wonder. So yes, I can personally confirm the sentence. If a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within. It's such a practical thing. You can actually taste it, touch it, feel it when you're in there, and then when you pop back out and you compare and you realize, oh my God, what happened to the bliss and the life that was in that rock and in everything else. Darkness is lack of light as sin is lack of love. It has no unique properties of its own. It is an example of the scarcity belief. Darkness is an example of the scarcity belief from which only error can proceed. You cannot I don't know. Let me just finish reading this and then we can discuss it. So I'll start again. Darkness is lack of light as sin is lack of love. It has no unique properties of its own. It is an example of the scarcity belief from which only error can proceed. Truth is always abundant. Those who perceive and acknowledge that they have everything have no needs of any kind. The purpose of the atonement is to restore everything to you, or rather, to restore it to your awareness. You were given everything when you were created, just as everyone was. Okay, this paragraph is loaded with immense goodness. Loaded. There's so many meanings you can get out of it, and understandings. I love the whole paragraph, but the part that I gravitate to is the idea that darkness or illusion has no properties of its own. Yeah, it is the light that has properties. We just mentioned this, but I like to repeat this. I mean, this is powerful. Okay, remember that example we talked about the light in your room. When you turn on the light, the darkness goes, but you cannot turn on the darkness. Okay, because darkness is not a thing in itself. Light is. Okay. Darkness is just the absence of the real thing. Yeah. As soon as the real thing shows up, the fake one goes because it doesn't have properties of its own. Think about it. We don't turn on darkness, we turn on lights. You cannot turn on darkness. It's impossible. You have to block the light to see darkness. Wow, it's so simple, but it's so profound. And, would be tempted even to gloss over it, but go back to the first sentence. Let's see, here, it is an example of the scarcity belief from which only error can proceed. So here we've just said that darkness has no properties of its own, and it is an example of the scarcity belief. Do you see how when we think we have shortages, we're not talking of something real that we actually have a shortage. What we should be telling ourselves is we have blocked out the light. Hence, that is why we are experiencing shortages or lack of abundance. Yeah, I think that's amazing. And now let's look at wholeness and spirit. Except ye become as little children means that unless you fully recognize your complete dependence on God, you cannot know the real power of the Son. And remember, the Son is you, in his true relationship with the Father. Okay? Remember, you and I are the Son. We are the sonship. This is talking about you and me. You have just been given the key to power. Yeah? The question is, will you do as you have just been advised? Well, it's your choice. This paragraph is literally telling you so much. So much. It's saying, unless you fully recognize your complete dependence on your Creator, you cannot know the real power that you do have vested in you. You see, that's a very clear cause-effect chain you've been given. So, right here in your face is the key. Whatever is true is eternal and cannot change or be changed. Spirit is therefore unalterable because it is already perfect. But the mind can elect what it chooses to serve. The only limit put on its choice is that it cannot serve two masters. If it elects to do so, the mind can become the medium by which spirit creates along the line of its own creation. If it does not freely elect to do so, it retains its creative potential but places itself under a tyranny rather than authoritative control. As a result, it imprisons, because such are the dictates of tyrants. To change your mind means to place it in the disposal of true authority. Okay, this needs a bit of discussion. As I understand this, it is saying that the mind will never lose creative power. If it comes from oneness, it creates reality. It extends, which is creating reality. If it comes from ego, it projects illusions. Also, you have a choice to either place your allegiance and surrender to spirit or place it and surrender to ego. Those are the two choices. There is no third choice. You cannot serve two masters. You can only serve one master. The choice is yours. And now, here is a topic that is bound to be a favorite with abundance seekers: the illusion of needs. You who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. Lack implies that you would be better off in a state somehow different from the one you are in. Needs arise only when you deprive yourself. This, in turn, depends on your perception of what you are. A sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need to correct. Wow, another powerful one, eh? Remember when we talked about forgiveness in the course overview, summary overview. Forgiveness means seeing things as they truly are. And when we say that, it means seeing things as they truly are from the sense of oneness. Yeah. So we're not talking about seeing the truth within the separation. You see, it's not seeing that, okay, I'm broke, I have only $100 left to my name, and that is the way things truly are. That's not what we mean here by things as they truly are. It is going beyond that. I am broke, I only have $100 left to my name. It's going beyond that and seeing things as they truly are. In other words, what do you perceive that you are? Are you that separate, broke person with $100 left to your name? Or are you beyond that, pretending to be that broke, separate person with $100 to their name? So here, forgiveness and seeing things as they truly are go well beyond what we think of forgiveness and what we think true truth is. And if this sentence is confusing you right here because of what we just discussed, I recommend that you go back to the module on the module that's labeled A Course in Miracles, overview summary. Watch that again all the way from the beginning to end to truly understand the true meaning of forgiveness and the true meaning of seeing things as they truly are. And then this will start to make much better sense for you. Let's read it again. You who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. To me, according to what I've learned and according to what's in the overview summary, complete forgiveness means seeing the illusions for what they are. Illusions, as in literally knowing that they're illusions, not theorizing and thinking they are, but literally knowing and seeing them as an illusion. Like the way when you wake up in the morning and you've had a dream and you wake up and you realize, oh, that was a dream. That is seeing things as they are. But in the dream, you thought it was real. Even if you're thinking, oh, I'm dreaming when I'm in the dream. But still, you'd run away if something chases you in the dream, even though you think that it's a dream. So it's a bit this is quite a loaded paragraph. That's why I'm spending a bit of time on it, because it really, when you get it, it really just releases a lot, releases you from a lot of self bondage, you could say. So let's last time read it through. You who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. Lack implies that you would be better off in a state somehow different from the one you are in. Needs arise only when you deprive yourself. There is no external need. It only comes when you deprive yourself. This, in turn, depends on your perception of what you are. You see? Okay? A sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need correct. Because, again, needs arise when you deprive yourself, and you only deprive yourself depending on your perception of what you are. So if you perceive yourself as separate from your creator, then you can have needs. You see that cause and effect chain right there? The idea of orders of need, which follows from the original error that one can be separated from God, requires correction at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. You cannot behave effectively while you function on different levels. However, while you do, correction must be introduced vertically from the bottom up. This is because you think you live in space, where concepts such as up and down are meaningful. Ultimately, space is as meaningless as time. Both are merely beliefs. To me, what this means is that, like illusions, there is no great need and small need. There's no like, wow, this is so difficult to fulfill this need, and this is so easy to fulfill this other need. Okay? Levels of difficulty in and of themselves are illusions, and the illusions of levels of need must be corrected even as one corrects the illusion of needs themselves. So there are two, it is saying that the first priority is to heal your mind from the idea of levels of difficulty, because that prevents you from behaving appropriately. Okay? Because you seem to think this need is so big, I can't handle it. Things like that. So once you've healed your mind from the idea of levels of difficulty, with that healed, it is then easy to subsequently correct the illusion of even having a need in the first place. But as long as we believe in levels, in space and time, then some miracles will seem harder, and we will fear and avoid some because we would think they are too difficult. And just to solidify this, that the idea that ultimately space is as meaningless as time, both are merely beliefs, watch again the module on the quantum field, and you'll see that even science has come to see that space-time is an illusion, at least the way we see it. It's an illusion, it's not like that. The real purpose of this world is to use it to correct your unbelief. You can never control the effects of fear yourself because you made fear and you believe in what you made. Okay, I love this too. This, for me, was what answered the question I used to have, I used to ask myself, if all this is an illusion, then I'm confused. If it's all meaningless, then what am I doing here? Or what am I to do here, Then what's the point, And what do I do with my daily requirements and my work and so on? What do I do with all that? So this was a confusion that hit me several years ago. I came to understand, though, that I can be in this world, but not of it. I can use the world, my daily activities, even my business and my so-called needs and all that, to awaken by asking my higher self to use it to lead me to awakening. The higher self can use all the machinations and projections of the ego to show you the light. It can use space and time to do so. It can use all that stuff. It can use the illusions to bring you back to the truth. Okay? If we are willing. So that way I live, in quotes, a normal life, yeah? But I have it as an intention that the higher self to use it, all of it, to wake me up. So in that way, I don't have to fight myself and think, then what's the point of doing what I'm doing now if it's all an illusion and all that sort of stuff, I can just continue as normal, but with the awareness that I'm allowing the Holy Spirit or the higher self to use whatever it is I'm doing in that moment to wake me up, to, basically, to enlighten me using the normal everyday life, you could say. Belief produces the acceptance of existence. That is why you can believe that is why you can believe what no one else thinks is true. It is true for you because it was made by you. In other words, whatever we accept as true for us becomes true for us. In that way, we project our own reality and we believe in it and we make it real, and we believe in it because we made it. And then once we made it, we believe in it. It's like a little chicken and egg scenario there, Perfect love casts out fear. If fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love exists. If there is fear, it produces a state that does not exist. Very brilliant logic there, isn't it? It's very elegant logic. Simple and elegant. Let's look at the distortions of miracle impulses. Your distorted perceptions produce a dense cover over miracle impulses, making it hard for them to reach your own awareness. Physical impulses are misdirected miracle impulses. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. This is because not doing it is a denial of self. Denial of self results in illusions, while correction of the error brings release from it. The love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another, because vision is still so dim. You can use your body best to help you enlarge your perception so you can achieve real vision, of which the physical eye is incapable. Learning to do this is the body's only true usefulness. But although you can perceive false associations, you can never make them real except to yourself. You believe in what you make. Whoa, this is powerful, eh? Have you noticed how blame and conflict really works exactly like this? Think of the last time you had a fight or argument. You were convinced that the other side is wrong, and they were convinced that you were wrong. Each of you were wondering, what's the matter with the other guy? Why can't they see this obvious truth? Each side was convinced that it is correct. That is because each side projected its own reality and assumed it is a common reality shared by all. Yeah? And it just wondered, why can't these other guys see the common reality? You believe what you make. You can never make them real except to yourself. And this example I just gave is very skinny. It's very basic. I'm sure this phrase was meant to mean so much more. I was just giving you a quick illustration. I hope you can now see that A Course in Miracles is a course in mind training. Can you see that now? Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed and learned from this presentation and you use what you have learned to transform your life and the lives of others. Thank you very, very much for your time, and we will speak again soon.